And I will get us started here. So, for anyone who may be new, if anyone is new, just wanted to send it around to myself included, introduce myself, and then our other source, board members will introduce themselves as well. So again, my name is Kellen Amy. I am the current president for this academic semester for Source. I will also be the president for this coming spring semester. We'll have more announcements about e-board positions, and so stay tuned on that. And I help organize our events and kind of direct these things as they go along. I'll pass it along to Hilde.
Hi, I'm Hilda Krieger. I'm vice president. This is my last semester in the MI program, and I've been involved with Source for a few years now in different positions. Jilly?
Hello, I'm Jilly. It's also my last semester. I'm the webmaster, so I kind of handle the website. Anyone has seen it. Um, and I was in this position last semester too. And that's my career with Source.
Cool. And we also, Tula, who is unable to make it this evening, she takes care of our notes as our secretary for our meetings. I'll also introduce Dr. Maria Del Bello, who is our faculty advisor and program coordinator slash director slash other various titles for the archives and preservation concentration within the MI program, if you'd like to say a few words as well.
Well, yes, thank you, Kelan, and welcome, Michelle. I think, Kelan, you covered everything. So I'm like a faculty advisor, and I say, oh, introduce me as well. And but I attend, and I just enjoy the wonderful guests that Kelan and his colleagues are bringing. So glad to be here.
Awesome. So I will introduce our speaker for tonight, who is Michelle Chiles, who is the head of archives and special collections at Providence College in Providence, Rhode Island. She has held that position since 2019 after previously serving as a Robinson Research Center manager with the Rhode Island Historical Society. She received her Master's of Library and Information Sciences, focusing on archives management from Simmons University in 2013, and works additionally as a part-time faculty member with the University of Rhode Island, teaching students in the online MLIS program. Michelle also serves as a mentor with the New England Archivists, a regional professional organization that looks to, quote, connect and support the diverse individuals and organizations in New England responsible for the care of cultural heritage and the documentary record through advocacy, education, communication, and the forging of a strong, inclusive professional network. Within this mentoring program, Michelle and other archivists speak with students and other professionals discussing their career goals, current events in archives, and any other topics of interest. This mentoring program is open to any student, even those who live outside of the New England area. I was fortunate enough to be part of Michelle's mentoring group over the past year as New England Archivist offers mentoring programs for students, which we will be talking about today. And I've seen the benefit of sharing thoughts related to the profession in an educational and inclusive environment. With that being said, please join me in welcoming Michelle.
Hello. All right. So I do have some slides, so I will transfer over to that. So thank you for having me this evening. Um, and so let me go ahead and share my screen. It's always a bit of a go. All right. So are you seeing my slides?
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you. You never know. It's always a bit of a mystery. Okay. So I will start off by saying I was grateful to be asked by Kellen to do this presentation, something about service and professional development. Is a really important part of the profession to me. And so I've put together some slides to introduce myself and my kind of career trajectory, but also hitting on some points about where students and sort of new and emerging professionals can kind of get involved in professional organizations. I will go through some of the section kind of quickly, mainly because I think more of those areas about how to get involved, what you can do, that balancing of all of that is more question and conversational than just someone talking at you saying it's a really good thing to do, because there are caveats to that. It's a really good thing to do um, in any profession. So I'll start with a bit of a background information. Um, Going back to, I have a bachelor's degree in history and social studies with an English lit minor, and I used to be a middle school teacher in Seattle. That's where I'm from, and I taught middle school for several years after getting my master's in teaching. And then we had an opportunity to move overseas, my partner and I, and so we did, and I couldn't teach there. So I was able to volunteer at the archives where we were, and was like, this is something that seems more in line with what I want to do instead of teaching um, in public schools. So when we returned to the States, we landed in Boston, and so with the background in teaching, that has always been a big focus of mine, which I think is one of the reasons why the mentoring and the professional engagement part is has been kind of naturally a good part of my profession as an archivist. As Kellen mentioned, I prior to Providence College, I was at the Robinson Research Center, which is the State Historical Society's library and archives for Rhode Island. So my patron base, it was very different, but also kind of the same because we were right in the middle of Brown's campus, basically. So a lot of college students still coming in. I was also a research and instruction librarian at a community college in the area, and my first job out of college, out of Simmons, was the archivist for the Handel and Haydn Society, which is a classical music society. Um, and so lots of different places, different types of institutions, which has kind of been crucial to kind of how I think about the profession. If you don't know anything about Providence College, we are a small liberal arts private institution in Providence, Rhode Island. We're just under 5,000 students. We were founded in 1917. And we are a Catholic institution run through by the Dominican friars. The library, of which the archives is one of the departments of, was a previously in the Harkins building, which was our first building. And then in 1969, they opened a purpose-built library. Um, and the archives has grown from my time when I started in 2019 of myself and one paraprofessional assistant who was full-time to three full-time archivists, including myself, and one half-time graduate assistant, and then several student workers. And so our department has grown and expanded both in staffing and size in the last 5 and a bit years. We'll take out the few years where we basically weren't on campus for COVID. Um, so as the head of the archives, I manage sort of all aspects of the archives, both the public facing and the behind the scenes. So managing our collections archivist and our reference archivist, and the work that they are sort of responsible for coordinating. And that includes everything from, our reading room, some of our workshops that we do, our exhibits, and all of those kinds of things. Um, when we were able to reassess and sort of increase that staffing, one of the things I did was put the sort of teaching and learning part of our mission at the core of that. We didn't really have a mission statement when I started. We were sort of part of the library and assumed we were just tagging along for the ride, which was great because we had, our library has great leadership and a great mission, but we kind of needed an identity. We sort of were sort of very much behind the scenes and had no real public facing to the students and faculty prior to 2019. Um, our collections are sort of typical for a academic archives. We obviously collect the college history, and that's everything from student organizations, athletics, and administrative records in all formats, on all types of formats. Um, but we also have our special collections, which are focused primarily on Rhode Island local history, with a very strong political collections focus. We have the mayor, one of the mayors of Providence, several congressmen and senators of Rhode Island, and some social organizations such as the Urban League of Rhode Island and the NAACP of Providence. Most of that collecting happened in the 60s and 70s with our first archivist. We are continuing to collect, but the majority of our large collections came in during that initial sort of 15-year period of growth. Um, and then we also have a large, rare, and non-circulating book collection, particularly strong in um, theology and religious studies, Dominicana, etc. And then we have for a small institution, we have a pretty incredible natural history book collection. And so, our collections sort of run the gamut of material styles and subject matter, but majority of our highest use is our local history and then the college history. This is just a few examples of our reading room and our exhibits and some of the things that we do, such as digitization, collections care, etc. Our teaching and learning focus is at that core, but we also have public and community researchers, so folks from outside the institution who come and use our collections as well. And so we have a pretty well-staffed reading room. We have drop-in hours. We have availability pretty much every day of the week, Monday through Friday, to be able to accommodate classes and researchers, etc. So to kind of get to the main point of our presentation today is talking about how do we get to that point where you are working in an institution like that and you are engaging with individuals, both collaborating with colleagues, collaborating with external professionals, and sort of getting into and networking with individuals who you may be working with or working for, etc. So just sort of a overview of my own professional engagement. This is sort of the background of the things that I've been involved in. Those of you that are on the committee of your student group, I um, fully understand how that all works and how much time and dedication and sort of pulling together your classmates and colleagues to participate and engage with those things. It can be feeling very trying when in addition you're doing all of your work and your schoolwork and maybe having part-time jobs or jobs. So yeah, as a student, I was a member of the SAA student chapter at Simmons. In full disclosure, when I did my master's in teaching and in my undergraduate, I was not involved with anything like extracurricular on campus. And I think it really changed how I operated within those spaces. And so one of the things that I did when I was doing my master's in teaching, I had never really been a class participant in my undergrad. I was a little shy, a little hesitant to do those things. So I sort of forced myself to be more contributing in class. And then when I went to Simmons, I was like, you know what? I'm changing a career change. I'm older. It means I'm going to probably have different standards of how I look at the profession and my expectations for a job. And so I need to get to know people. One, I'm not from New England, so I don't know anybody. I'm not part of this like region. I didn't go to these institutions that I want to find a job at. And so I sort of made the conscious decision to become really involved. Um, I, in my first NEA meeting, I met somebody who was on the education committee, and they said, "Hey, we have a student position that's on the committee. You sort of get to understand how a committee works and the kind of work you have to do to plan a workshop or different things like that. But you're a student member, so it's sort of like committee work light." And I was like, "Okay." So I ran for that, and then I served on the education committee after I graduated for another 2 cycles, I think, which are like 2-year periods. And so it was a great role. You had to kind of help plan the workshops and understand what was important to people, but also um, sort of the you got to sort of put your 2 cents in and say, "Hey, I want to learn this. Let's try to get a speaker or workshop on that." Um, we had roundtables at NEA, the New England Archivists. That was kind of a new thing when about midway through my time at Simmons. So two friends of mine from school, we decided to propose an early professionals and students roundtable, sort of akin to the SAA student roundtable. And so we formed that. And then as one of our outgoing sort of projects was to propose the idea of mentoring circles. SAA had mentoring program, other professional organizations. So in Rhode Island, it's RILA, which is the Rhode Island Library Association. They had a mentoring program. Special Libraries Association had a mentoring program, so did ALA. But we were like, well, what about like locally? Because most of the people that we were talking with wanted something that was regional. Because even if you're willing to move from Rhode Island to Massachusetts or New Hampshire or wherever, you are staying fairly regional with a lot of people. Some folks are willing to move anywhere and everywhere, which is great. But we wanted something that was sort of regional. Um, I also what had as a student several memberships to other institutional like organizations just to sort of figure them out and see whether or not they were sort of in my wheelhouse and of interest. And then served on um, since then served on SAA and NEA. So I sort of culled down my memberships because once you graduate, your memberships are much more expensive. So I sort of trialed them when I was a student and figured out which ones worked for me. Um, and then in our library consortium, because PC is part of a library consortium in the area of other academic institutions, we also have a archives group of the archivists that are at those institutions. So part of that as well. Um, so kind of mentioned this already, but sort of like why you should get involved, what my sort of takeaways are for the reasons for doing it. It's networking. You're getting to know people. Your classmates are amazing colleagues, and they will eventually become oftentimes your peer colleagues. But institutions have that structure, have that sort of hierarchy of leadership, and the folks that you're going to be seeking jobs from are in those institutions already. So networking gets you those connections. Um, it also sort of gives you that experience of organizing and planning, being on those committees. It's group work, um, but in a professional setting. It's a little more um, flexible usually, but it is part of that sort of professional organizing, planning. And if the professional organizations aren't giving you what you want, being part of them hopefully can try to help steer some of that. Um, and then, like I said before, as a student, one of the best things, if you can time it right, is like renewing your memberships kind of right as you're leaving so that you have a year on a student membership cost. Because when you are going to conferences, your badge doesn't say, I'm a student member, even if you've graduated, but the amount of money you had to send them does, which is very helpful when you are trying to still figure out which institution and professional organizations work for you and are best fit for what you're interested in doing. Being able to kind of test those out for a bit of time, it's possible as a student. I would not be able to today afford or want to afford a professional membership to SAA, ALA, SL, all of the ones. So I've had to make a choice, but knowing what works best for me took some time. Um, so some of the things that I like to say are sort of the benefits of engaging and doing um, part of this professional organization. Um, is that sort of contributing through committees um, and volunteering. So these are all volunteer positions generally, and so they rely on members to volunteer to serve in these roles. Um, and oftentimes the professional organizations recognize or hopefully recognize that students want to be involved in these professional organizations, but don't necessarily have the same professional support or time because they're working on their degree. So they do create opportunities for students and early professionals to sort of get in to those committees and such. And so that's a good way to do it because that way you're not raising your hand necessarily to be the chair of a committee and then you are just wondering what you got yourself into. Um, but some people do that and thrive. Um, I like to test things out. Um, so kind of ways that you can test things out, things like short-term roles as opposed to volunteering for a 3-year term position, volunteer for a program committee. It's just to plan that event and then you're done. Or a particular working group because they're doing a study on, I think NEA just wrapped up doing a working group on like a salary study. And so it was a short-term position. Similarly, instead of taking on elected roles, looking at the roundtables and the subcommittees is also another way to kind of dip your toe in. And then exploring, but not overcommitting. Just because you are a member of a professional organization, you don't have to volunteer. You don't have to serve on something right away, especially because you're learning, you're figuring out what it is that you're kind of wanting to do and what you're interested in. Um, and then the other part of that is, and this is sort of where I think um, the engagement in these committees and things is sort of part of mentoring because you often find mentors through these that it's as an informal matter. So this to me is part of that mentoring and networking aspect of professional contributions. Um, and part of that is doing presentations, writing pieces. And that doesn't mean you have to submit a, scholarly article for publication. Presenting it, writing for the newsletter or writing a blog post or writing, presenting at the local and regional conferences is a great way to sort of get used to doing those things, but also to try to kind of test some things out. Sometimes, if you're thinking about a research project and you're working on it, you can present at a smaller um, program and then maybe be working on that and develop that into something larger. Um, and then, so as I mentioned, a lot of things have less formal um, ways to publish and present and things that are doing, like session reports, reviews of things. I am currently writing a review for the NEA newsletter on the mentoring program as like a 10-year retrospective because it was founded like 10 years ago. So it's not very long. It's up to 1,000 words. It's doable. I just sort of write my thoughts about it. Much less stressful than trying to write a journal article on a particular topic. Um, and then, thinking about how you can leverage some of the work that you do either in your internships or your coursework to present in presentations or in some kind of written form. Um, and then one of the things that I didn't really think about until much later in my I think I didn't even think about it as a student at Simmons because travel was tricky. But there is the possibility that if you want a smaller um, presentation audience at a local level, it doesn't have to be your local. You could present at like Marac or NEA or somewhere else that's not necessarily your regional professional organization, but it's still that smaller community than trying to present at like a national level or be part of a national level. Some organizations have limitations, especially serving on committees, that they want you to be more kind of regionally local, but not all do. And so that's something to kind of look into too. Or if you're looking to relocate, being, contributing or being part of that organization of where you're looking to maybe move. And then with the mentoring program, this is just a little overview of the two different sort of models that I've experienced as a professional. The New England Archivists work in the circles model, which means that there are two mentors and 4 to 6 mentees, which is not my favorite word, but I haven't quite figured out a better word for that. Um, but basically, it sort of brings a group together as opposed to a one-on-one mentoring, which is what most other experiences I've had have been. Like the Society of American Archivists, that's how they do it. The one-on-one, you get matched up, and then it goes for a year or 2 years. Um, and the thing about mentoring is that it is a collaboration. I like to look at it differently. There is a lot of career advice, especially when you're working with um, students, graduating students, really early professionals. Career counseling is and advice is definitely a key aspect to the relationship and the partnership. But there is a difference between the mentoring relationship and a career counselor. And I think thinking about how SAA describes the two can be helpful because they do have a career advice center. And then they have, which is feels a little more transactional. You submit your resume, your cover letter, they look at it, then you meet and you talk about it. And you can have other conversations about like management and like work dealing with like workplace things. But it feels a little more transactional, whereas the relationship develops over the course of like a year or 9 months, depending on the program. And it is much more of a two-way street kind of thing. So if you're looking to be part of a mentoring group, thinking about um, your needs and your goals for that relationship, that partnership, or that group is kind of important because not every organization or mentoring opportunity works the same way, but it also is like, what are you looking for? And so making sure that it is the fit that you need. And making sure that you come to meetings prepared to discuss and share. It isn't really um, fair to yourself or anybody. This is one of the things that I've learned that like to have that sort of passive approach to a mentoring position, mentoring partnership, mainly because we've all spent like a whole day doing our jobs or in our work and then doing classwork as a student or doing, working, and then, sitting and listening to somebody give you career advice or talking about management or different things. Um, it's it's a little um, ineffective. And so making sure that you are willing to and have the time to prepare and be open to discussing and sharing information because that's what makes it a benefit to you. And sometimes it doesn't, a fit doesn't work. Whether it's scheduling is always complicated or you're not really getting the information or the vibe, just vibe from somebody that works for you. I had a mentor as a student from the Special Libraries Association, and halfway through our mentoring, she moved from a academic institution to a corporate position and really didn't have the same mindset of the profession that she did when we first started, and it didn't re wasn't really beneficial to me anymore at that point to continue that mentoring relationship, mainly because she really didn't have an interest in the the type of archivist that I wanted to be when I grew up. So it didn't really quite like fit anymore. She was a great person. We just had very divergent career ideas. And so and I asked to sort of cut the mentoring partnership short, and that's fine. It's not, it's not a bad thing. The worst thing would be if he just stopped and didn't like communicate. But it is okay if it's not working. It's a time commitment, and if it's not working for you, don't go. Change it up. And then these are just a few of the things thinking about, especially as you sort of move from being a student to moving into like first jobs, is understanding how the places that you're looking at for jobs see these types of services, both the services that you are providing to the profession, but also that you are seeking as a profession, sort of in terms of collaborations. Some jobs require service and continued professional development. Think if it's an academic position that's on a tenure track, and others don't really won't necessarily support the time you need. So you have to balance whether or not you're willing to do all of your professional development outside the working day. Um, I am in an academic institution. We are not identified as faculty, so I'm not in a tenured position, so I don't have a service requirement, but my library directors value professional development and growth and continued learning for their staff. So we do get to do some of this um, during the workday and go to conferences and not have to take vacation days to do that, to present or go to a committee meeting. Um, but I also don't have unlimited time that I can do that. And I also balance things like doing things outside of the 8 to 4 workday. But I do get to do a fair bit during the workday, so it's a balance. Um, and then whatever you join, it's extra time because even if you get all the time in the world during the workday, chances are if you're doing professional development, professional engagement, you're probably working on some of that outside of the work hours. So make sure you like it. Um, so make sure you are choosing committees, working groups, etc., that are of interest to you. Like my favorite committee that I'm on right now for SAA is the Exhibits and Events Committee because we do a lot of exhibits at PC and we do a lot of programming, and that's something that we've grown over the last few years. And I love the people that are on that committee for SAA. I had another committee that I was on recently that it just really our missions, our goals just really weren't really fitting with what I was currently doing at my job. So it felt very extra, very on top of everything else. And so when that was done, I did not run again for that in that committee. And then making sure that you kind of combine all of those different types of professional engagement because it's not just serving on committees and getting a mentoring relationship, but it is also conferences and workshops and all of those things kind of combine together to make a well-rounded experience with being an engaged professional. So making sure you kind of have all of those things together. So that was my quick run through of that part. I will stop sharing so that I can see faces and not a banner. Um, and there we go. And there we are. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. All right. So now that we are all done with our presentation section, I just wanted to open it up to anyone in the audience here who has a question. You could type it or just unmute yourself, whatever works for you. And if not, I have some questions that I will ask as well.
Michelle, I was wondering if you could talk about maybe an example of a presentation you gave at a conference or a publication and sort of like give a timeline of how that developed and if it came from something you did at work.
Yeah. So most of my presentations that I've given are work related. It's that whole, work smarter, not harder. It's that double dipping of like, oh, we did this thing. Now we've talked about it at work, and now let's talk about it somewhere else. And so, for example, we have an exhibits class where we work with a history faculty to throughout the semester, and the students create an exhibit as their final project, and we have an exhibit opening, and the students give a like a curatorial talk, and so we presented the development of that semester-long project at I think it was ACRL New England, which is the Association of College and Research Libraries. It's the New England chapter. And it was focusing on that teaching and learning in the archives. So she and our head of media and technology in the library, because we had a social media component, and the students did that. So that department within the library helped the students with that. And so we presented on how we kind of came about making the project. Um, Writing, in terms of most of my writing has been on the more informal level. I do have an article regarding the mentoring circles at NEA, and we presented at SAA on it with the Society of Georgia Archivists on their mentoring program, and then we wrote an article together. But most of mine have been, doing session reports, going to a conference and writing up a review of it and a summary of that session, and writing for the newsletters and things like that. And usually those are framed based on, reporting on kind of what we're doing at PC or doing within an organization. So writing about the Helen Archives group and that kind of thing. So yeah, it really is a little bit about, we end up having to write these kind of summaries in our jobs a lot in reports to our bosses who then have to give them to their bosses and their bosses. And so it's sort of spinning some of that same information to a different audience. So, which makes it a little easier to stomach writing a bunch of things.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm just going to throw
I
in
have a
some links
question.
here for our various links relating to NEA and the article that Michelle mentioned. Ryan, you can go ahead.
Okay, so you mentioned that your first archival job was overseas. Where was that? I'm
Oh,
just
yeah. So it was
curious.
I volunteered. I didn't work overseas.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I will give the full disclosure of it's really hard to get a job overseas, as a US based, unless you have sponsorship somewhere or have dual citizenship. We are not typically a profession that's recognized as a high need profession in most countries. So um, it's hard. Not impossible, but it's hard. I have a friend who's now an archivist at CERN, but she has dual French citizenship and she speaks fluent French, so she's able to integrate into their professional community much easier than if I tried. So, but I volunteered at the State and Library Archives in Tasmania in Australia, which is where we lived for a little over 3 years. And it was great. So
Okay, and what was the Helen group? I'm probably
Helen,
butchering
yeah,
it. Sorry.
Helen is our library consortium, so which Providence College is part of, and so is Rhode Island College, Bryant, Wheaton, and several other institutions. And it's basically most academic libraries are part of a consortium. It basically helps us negotiate the crux of the biggest benefit for our administrations is that it helps us negotiate prices on like journals, usually mostly journals, and databases and things like that. And so we're part of that, but it also gives us kind of a built-in community of professional colleagues at other institutions that are kind of connected.
Cool. Does anybody else have any questions at the moment? Yes.
Um, Thank you, Michelle. You mentioned trying out different memberships. I think this is genius. And also the student memberships, how much cheaper they are. I think professional memberships are extremely expensive,
Hmm.
by the way, but compared to the salaries as well. Just think of that. So, can you tell a little bit more about SAA mentorship apart from one-on-one, more transactional, and also NEA or MARAC? And
Hmm.
NEA and MARAC are combining forces occasionally, but
Hmm.
our students are more kind of MARAC
Yeah.
oriented.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, so the SEA mentoring, I've done both where I've been a mentor and the mentee. I think they use a different term for that role, which I equally don't love. There's no good word for that role in that relationship. But the one-on-one requires, I think, a little bit more. This is what my colleague who helped form the mentoring circle years ago. She's now at James Madison down in Virginia. We're talking about that the one-on-one requires a bit more of a heavy lift from both sides. There is like a almost like a pressure to be all the things for for the person and serve all of those elements. Whereas with the mentoring circle, if you have a meeting, like we schedule our meetings like monthly with the mentoring circle, and if you go and you're exhausted that day, there are four other people in the group that are there that can kind of help carry it a little bit. So you might participate more one month than the other, or the topic that you're covering that week is more of interest to you than another week, so or month. So you kind of like sit back a little bit, but you're there and you're engaging. Um, but yeah, it's really they match you, and in both instances, my experience is the matching is, ideally you're matched based on career interests and potentially regional interests, whether you want to meet in person or online or a combo. But the folks that do the logistical organizing are like logistical gymnasts because there is so much behind the scenes on that. And you can't get everything from your wish list when you sign up. And so the scheduling and most mentoring programs have a excess of people who want to be mentored and a lack of mentors. And so trying to balance those out is just matching people so that there is availability. And so figuring out how, even if it's not a perfect match, figuring out how to make that work is important. And that's kind of on both of the people if it's a one-on-one. Um, and so as the person being mentored, having a clear idea of what you want out of, what you're looking for is super important because undoubtedly the person who raised their hand to say, yeah, I'll, join forces with this person and talk with them every month or every couple weeks. Um, they're already willing to do it, but you've got to give them a little um, sort of seed to talk about what it is that you're interested in um, as a new professional.
Thank
But
you.
both work, and I've done both, and I like both for different reasons. So yeah.
Great, thanks.
Awesome. I think if that's all it for our questions here, I do have like one or two that I may want to ask. We kind of
Mhm.
covered a bunch of the ones that I initially written down, but which is good. Just kind of maybe outside of the mentoring position. I guess actually I would speak on my own experience. The NEA mentoring group is fantastic, and I would encourage any students who's still here at Rutgers to consider it. It was a great way for me to help share my own experiences as someone who does not have all the experience yet, obviously. it was a nice space to air grievances on what happens at work and what questions confuse us, what happens in the world that affects archives, what to do when there's no more funding for archives versus what to do when this exists, or what happens when you apply to a bunch of jobs and you get to the second interview and then they don't hire you 8 times in a row, something like that. And being able to talk about those things on a monthly basis was very reassuring, and it did provide a nice space to just grow in that way, and know that in a virtual learning environment where the majority of us are at Rutgers, that you're not alone in your experiences, and how to talk about different things in your different classes, or in your different internships, or things that you may have questions about relating to archival programming or database management, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just my 30-second piece here.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
can
yeah, go
I
ahead, go
just
ahead.
interject there? Because one of the things that and this is I would assume is similar to like Marac, NEA. NEA is very like even though it's New England, it's very Boston centric. I live in New Bedford, which is the south coast of Massachusetts, but I work in Providence. Providence is the tiny little brother of Massachusetts. So NEA always feels like we're everyone else is doing whatever Boston area wants to do. And so I'm assuming that Merrick and other like regional institutions, there's going to be the big hitters that kind of dominate the conversations and the programming steering and all of those different things. And I think what was really interesting to me that I learned when we had this group was that everybody who was in the group except for Kellen was from Simmons. Like both myself and our other mentor, who she and I graduated from Simmons together, and both work in Rhode Island. And then the other two mentees were both at Simmons and close to finishing and things like that. That it was really nice to hear from another program and understand the differences of what was going on, how the students were engaged, how just different classes functioned and different internships and professional engagement. So that was really interesting. So that's one of my pushes for like local doesn't have to be your local if it works for you to like a need that maybe a different group is doing something a little different because you also then will meet people outside of the main institutions that seem to always be around in your area that you may not um, be part of. So that was really a bonus for us, I think. So yeah.
Agreed, and definitely it was the most for me when I was looking into these programs. It was the most accessible opportunity for me and the most cost affordable in the links I sent. Student memberships are 1750 for a year, which is relatively affordable compared to most professional organizations. And the very comfortable atmosphere that the NEA mentoring groups provide, I think, is a nice step away from whatever transact if transactional works for you, fine, but is this different step away from that? I think my last question here, not necessarily relating to mentoring, but in your management type of role, Michelle, are there any traits or experiences that you look for in someone who is applying for an archival position, as many of us here or some of us here are going on to that point in our careers?
Yeah. As somebody who's been a hiring manager for 10 years or so of my career, I have a lot of thoughts on hiring. Um, and I think, we have a lot of MLIS programs, information programs, that on paper look very similar. Everybody, you graduate 20 people, 30 people, 80 people, whatever it is out of a program in a given academic cycle, and everybody's resume looks pretty similar. What differentiates you is that hands-on experience and the engagement. So if I see that, like maybe you only had one internship, you're working part-time somewhere else that may or may not even be archives related, but you also are serving on a committee for XYZ, like I'm like, okay, they're in it, they're engaged in the profession, but that hands-on experience is key through those internships, through volunteering, which I have a lot of thoughts on the reality of I don't want unpaid labor like unpaid internships and volunteering, but I also know that our profession has had like every funding opportunity just ripped out from under us. I would say if you're doing volunteering or an internship that isn't paid, make sure that you have a quality supervisor because sometimes places are so desperate for just the labor that they don't have their own professional archivists or special collections librarians, and they're looking for to interns to do that for them. And that to me is a dangerous situation for you as a professional because you are supposed to be learning in those situations, and there's nobody to learn from. So I would say look for those hands-on opportunities that actually provide you a learning experience. Because that's what I look for as a hiring manager is like you could read a whole bunch on archival processing, but until you have a box of crazy stuff in front of you and walk through how to organize it or walk through how to do a digitization project and handle and identify certain types of AV materials, there's no way you're going to be able to do that because best practices and what happens in reality are very different things. Um, and so theory and practice um, are very different. And then I also would say, as you look at your resume and you're thinking about applying for jobs, don't leave off what you think is unrelated experience. Your jobs as summer camp counseling or your campus mailroom job or your retail and restaurant and service experience all speak to situations that you have professionally navigated and build skills in certain areas. And so, you know, if you only worked 5 hours a week at, your aunt's coffee shop when you were in high school, you probably don't need that on your resume anymore. But if you were the, co-supervisor at a summer camp all summer and you supervised 150 kids and made sure they all got home safely every day and nobody ate peanut butter that they weren't supposed to eat and everyone went home alive, that's kind of an important skill set. And so don't don't leave those off. You don't have to go into the detail with them as much on your resume, but to see that you worked in some of those roles, that also differentiates you from everybody else who took all the same courses and graduated with the same, theoretically, same credentials. And your cover letter. I know some people don't care about cover letters. We all don't like writing them, but they're important. And they're usually the which pile you go on divider when you have a pile of 100 applicants with the same um, degree. So don't shirk on the cover letter writing and make it different for every job because we can tell. Especially if you leave the wrong institution in the cover letter, um, which has happened more than once. So those are the things that I look for. Every manager is different. I have a coworker who doesn't care about cover letters at all, but she's not hiring for my team, so I don't have to debate with that on her.
Well, those are definitely great points. And I think one thing I would add to that is if you are someone who is coming to these source meetings, whether you're on the e-board or not, include that in your resume. It's valuable to show, especially here at Rutgers with a lot of us being virtual, that you are involved. And if someone asks, oh, what is source? Or you have a PDF version of your resume that is submitted, put a hyperlink in. So maybe if they hover over it, they can click on and be like, oh, wow, like this goes beyond what they're learning in class. And then my last, I guess, final announcement is we do have board openings here at Source. We have a webmaster and vice president position. Um, and those forms are still open. I sent the link in the chat. And we welcome people to apply, and we'll have a meeting slash election. It's very informal, as we've done in the past with our current board members, and whoever is able to make it for that meeting will be considered for and fills out the form will be considered for the upcoming spring semester. That membership or that position applies to the following semester if you are still in school and still willing or would like to be a part of that, be a part of Source. Um, for as long as you're here at Rutgers. And so if you would like to do that, we'd be happy to have you for the spring. Myself, as well as Tallulah will be here in the spring, and we will host some more fun events for our Rutgers community.
Nice. I would say, since you're webmaster, I served as the webmaster web committee person at NEA. The serving on the web position is one of the like best positions if you have a tight or funky schedule because you often are doing the bulk of the work you're doing for the committee asynchronously to like having a meeting and planning a program. I've always felt like it was the most flexible in terms of the time I had to put into stuff. Sometimes where it was like I had to do a bunch of stuff this week, but then there would be like months where I didn't have to do anything for that, for the actual like turnaround of things. So if you're somebody who has a really busy schedule, the web positions where you're the person posting the blog posts for a group or doing the webmaster, it's kind of a good one for that. If you're someone who likes to stay up till 3 a.m. because that's when you want to get your stuff done and no one else wants to meet with you that time, the webmaster is a good position for that.
So yeah, I agree as well. So, oh, Julia, were you going to add something?
Oh yeah, I was just
Yeah.
gonna say, like for this position specifically, it's like a bulk of the work is at the very beginning of the semester, and then it's kind of like so chill until there's like a meeting, and then it's like completely calm again. So it's a very and if you know WordPress for making websites, that's the one we use. And so if you already know it, it's so easy. And it's very easy to learn too. And I'm thinking of making like an instruction thing to like help people
Mhm.
because I already knew how to use it when I came into this. But yeah, it's a very chill, pretty fun position. So
Our last meeting for that will be on December 15th, where we will have a more personal Zoom, and we will send it to those who have applied. And we will come on, and after we run our election quotes, we can show those coming in the things that need to be done, walk through how to access the website. We can share our screen, take whatever time we need. It's all very simple. Obviously, we meet once a month. We throw the video link on YouTube, and we hyperlink that into the website with a brief description of what happened. And that's about it. And then we will also be publishing like our annual reports online as well. And there's sections that have been labeled out in the past, so it's kind of plug and play. Just gotta fill it out. And so that's kind of it. And so I just want to say a final thank you to Michelle for joining us.
Thank
Um,
you.
for this evening. It's been really great advice, and would definitely encourage anyone who's still going to be in Rutgers for a little bit more to consider joining NEA or some other form of professional organization or a mentoring group as well. So,
Excellent.
wish you all the
Yeah.
best. Yeah.
Thank you all for having me. And if you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out. Um, and I'm happy to chat. So
Mhm.
Thank
Alrighty.
you.
Well, thank you, everybody. Maybe we'll hopefully see some of you guys soon.
Bye.
Yep. Bye bye.
Yeah,
thank
bye,
you.
bye,
thank you
Bye.
again.
bye.
Thank you.